You know, every year, thousands of families are left with this like agonizing reality
Mm,
of an unsolved murder, right?
yeah.
They're just trapped in this like limbo of unanswered questions.
Hmm.
Their loved one's case, grows colder with each passing year.
Right.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today, the unsolved murder of Cory Mitchell.
Yeah, what's particularly heartbreaking about this case is that it happened right in front of his children.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't, a dark alley or some remote location.
Right.
It was a seemingly ordinary Saturday evening. Corey's coming home with his 11-year-old twins,
Okay.
pizza in hand.
Like, you can almost picture it, right? The anticipation of, like a relaxing evening, maybe a movie night,
Right.
completely shattered by this, like, sudden appearance of a masked gunman.
Absolutely.
It's just like a parent's worst nightmare.
It is.
And to make matters worse, 13 years later, Cory's family is still searching for answers.
Wow.
They've provided us with police reports, witness testimonies, court documents, like a whole stack of material to try to make sense of this tragedy.
Yeah. It's a complex case with twists and turns that could rival a crime novel.
Mm-hmm.
We have an ex-girlfriend, Danielle,
Right.
with a history of volatile behavior and
Yeah.
these chilling text messages urging someone to kill Cory.
Oh, wow.
And then there are these mysterious figures of Muck and Lee linked to Danielle in those threats.
So let's start by unpacking the events of that fateful night.
Yeah.
It was May 29th, 2010 in Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
Cory and his twins were getting out of their car, parked across the street from their house.
Mm.
It was around sunset. They had that pizza box, like just a snapshot of normalcy before everything went dark.
Yeah. Suddenly a masked gunman emerges from an abandoned house across the street. He doesn't hesitate. He calls out Cory's nickname, CM Dub, and fires a shot.
That detail right there sends chills down your spine. The gunman knew Cory's nickname,
Right.
suggesting a personal connection,
Yeah.
or at least a connection to someone who knew Cory well.
Yeah.
This wasn't just some random act of violence. This
Right.
was targeted.
Yeah, and it adds another layer of complexity to the investigation because it narrows down that pool of potential suspects to those within Cory's circle.
And must have been absolutely terrifying for Cory's twins,
Oh, yeah.
witnessing their father being attacked like that.
Absolutely.
The gunman chases after them, firing wildly.
Mm-hmm.
Cory's daughter, Aisha, is hit in the leg.
Oh, my gosh.
Then the gunman turns back to Cory, shooting him multiple times.
The scene itself is like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
The abandoned house, the discarded pizza box, shell casings littering the ground.
Wow.
When police arrived, Cory was clinging to life but fading fast.
Oh, no.
He only managed to say, "I don't know," when asked who shot him.
That's so haunting. I don't know. Was he in shock,
Right.
protecting someone? Or
Yeah.
did he genuinely not recognize his attacker?
It's a question that has plagued investigators for years.
Right.
But what makes it even more perplexing are the two incidents involving Cory just weeks before the murder.
Right, like a prelude to the tragedy.
Yeah.
First, there was that attempted robbery. Two men pulled Cory from his truck and fired shots at him as he escaped.
And during that incident, Cory mentioned to the police that he was having problems with an ex-girlfriend. Then, just a week later, Cory reported receiving threatening text messages.
Okay.
He even gave the police a specific phone number.
And here's where it gets really frustrating. The police didn't seem to follow up on these incidents as thoroughly as they could have.
Right.
We have access to an interview with Detective Vi, who worked on the case.
Mm-hmm.
He expressed confusion as to why those threatening texts were only documented in a memo and not a formal crime report.
Right.
A formal report would have triggered a more in-depth investigation.
It's certainly a missed opportunity, and
Yeah.
it raises questions about whether the police could have potentially prevented the murder if they had taken those earlier incidents more seriously.
And we know from the source material that Cory's mother, Carol, was worried.
Yeah.
She urged him to stay with her after the attempted robbery.
Mm.
But Cory reassured her, saying, "Mom, if something happens to me, I know you got the kids."
Oh, wow.
It's heartbreaking knowing what ultimately happened.
Those words are incredibly poignant.
Yeah.
They reveal the fear Cory must have been carrying in those final weeks.
Right.
But now let's delve into this complicated relationship
Yeah.
between Cory and his ex-girlfriend, Danielle.
Right. Their relationship seems to have been a roller coaster of emotions.
Yeah.
They had broken up a few months before the murder.
Mm.
But according to the police reports and witness statements,
Right.
there were still a lot of unresolved issues between them.
Carol, Cory's mother,
Yeah.
described Danielle as possessive and prone to outbursts.
Mm-hmm.
She even mentioned an incident where Danielle stole Cory's house keys.
Oh, wow.
These details suggest a potentially volatile dynamic between them.
Right, and then there are those text messages,
Mm.
the ones Danielle allegedly sent to a man named Lee, urging him to kill Cory.
According to police records, those messages were sent from a phone belonging to a man nicknamed Mark. He claimed Danielle had been at a party with him and his daughter Polly,
Okay.
and that Danielle instructed Polly to send the messages on her behalf.
So now we have Muckley and Polly entering the picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's like adding pieces to a puzzle, but the image is still blurry.
Exactly. And to complicate things further, the police were unsuccessful in their attempts to contact Polly.
Right.
They couldn't verify Mock's claims
Well, hey.
or get Polly's side of the story.
What about Lee? What's his connection to all of this?
Well, initially, Lee denied knowing Cory, but when the police started asking about his scooter, he abruptly ended the interview.
Huh.
It's unclear why the scooter was relevant,
Right.
but it clearly made him nervous.
So we have this web of connections, conflicting accounts,
Yeah?
and those incriminating text messages. It's a lot to unpack. But what about the physical evidence? Did the police find anything
Right.
that could directly link any of these suspects to the crime scene?
They did find a tea bottle at the scene,
Okay.
but the DNA testing came back inconclusive. It wasn't enough to definitively tie anyone to the murder.
Mm-hmm.
However, based on the available evidence,
Right.
they focused their investigation on Danielle and Lee.
Okay.
They suspected Lee as the triggerman and Danielle as an accomplice.
And this brings us to the legal complexities of the case.
Mm.
Even though Danielle admitted to sending those text messages urging Lee to kill Cory,
Mm-hmm.
she was never formally charged with complicity in his murder.
Right. To understand why,
Yeah.
we need to talk about what's called a grand jury.
Okay.
A grand jury is a group of citizens
Okay.
who review evidence presented by the prosecution
Mm-hmm.
to determine if there's enough to formally charge someone with a crime.
Right.
In Danielle's case, the grand jury decided not to indict her, and she was released.
So even though there's evidence suggesting she might have played a role in Cory's death,
Yeah.
legally there wasn't enough to charge her.
Exactly. Proving complicity,
Mm-hmm.
the involvement in a crime without directly committing the act, can
Okay.
be difficult. It often relies on connecting the dots between the actions of multiple individuals and establishing a clear intent to commit the crime.
It's incredibly frustrating,
It is.
especially for Cory's family, who are still seeking justice after all these years.
It's a harsh reality of the legal system.
Yeah.
Sometimes, even when there's suspicion,
Right.
there simply isn't enough solid evidence to bring charges.
It's a painful situation,
Yeah.
leaving Cory's loved ones in a state of limbo with no clear answers and no one held accountable for his death.
It is. Yeah, it's a truly agonizing situation for Cory's family. You know, they're left with this gaping wound of unanswered questions, and the legal system, in their eyes, hasn't delivered justice.
Right. You can only imagine the frustration and grief they must be carrying. But the case doesn't just end there, right?
Yeah.
There's still so many loose ends that need to be explored.
Absolutely. And this is where your perspective becomes really valuable. You've been poring over these documents, immersing yourself in this case.
Right.
You might have picked up on something we haven't, a connection, a discrepancy, a detail
Right.
that could shed new light on this mystery.
So let's take a step back and consider some of the most intriguing aspects of this case.
Okay.
For example, what about Lee and his sudden refusal to cooperate with the police?
Right.
What was it about that scooter that made him so nervous?
It's certainly suspicious behavior.
Yeah.
Was he hiding something?
Right.
Was the scooter somehow involved in the crime?
Right.
The source material doesn't provide a definitive answer, but it's definitely a thread worth pulling.
And then there's Danielle.
Right.
Her role in all of this is so ambiguous. Was she truly a heartbroken ex lashing out in a moment of despair?
Right.
Or did her anger and jealousy escalate into something far more sinister?
The text messages she sent are undeniably incriminating, but could they be interpreted as simply venting her frustration?
Mhm.
Or were they a calculated attempt to instigate violence?
Right.
The line between emotional outburst and criminal intent
Yeah.
can sometimes be blurry.
And let's not forget the missing pieces of this puzzle. We still haven't heard from Polly, the young woman who allegedly sent those threatening texts at Danielle's behest.
Right.
And then there's Brandy,
Right.
the woman who approached Cory's mother, Carol, at his funeral, claiming to know what happened.
Brandy's appearance is particularly intriguing. According to Carol's statement, Brandy seemed genuinely distressed and said she wanted to help,
Right.
but she vanished before Carol could get her contact information.
Wow.
It's as if she appeared out of thin air and disappeared just as quickly.
It's frustrating knowing these individuals might hold crucial information, but they've seemingly vanished into thin air.
Yeah.
It begs the question, what are they afraid of?
Their silence speaks volumes, doesn't it? It
Mhm.
suggests they might be fearful perhaps for their own safety or the safety of others.
Mhm.
It's possible they witnessed something traumatic that night, something they're reluctant to reveal.
It's understandable, especially in a case as complex and potentially dangerous as this one. But it also highlights the importance of community involvement in seeking justice.
Right.
Even a seemingly insignificant detail could be the missing link that cracks this case wide open.
Absolutely. Solving crimes isn't just the responsibility of the police.
Right.
It's a collective effort.
Hmm.
Neighbors looking out for each other, witnesses coming forward, sharing information.
Right.
These actions can make a real difference.
So we encourage you, our listener, to engage with this case actively. Don't be afraid to challenge assumptions, to connect the dots, and to draw your own conclusions.
Right.
You might possess a piece of the puzzle without even realizing it.
Perhaps you overheard a conversation,
Mhm.
saw something unusual that night, or know someone connected to the case.
Right.
Any detail, no matter how small, could be significant.
Detective V, in his interview, emphasized that even information you think the police already have could be valuable.
Right.
It could corroborate existing evidence.
Yeah.
Or provide a new perspective that leads investigators down a different path.
They're literally asking for anything that might shed light on this case.
Wow.
Don't underestimate the power of your memory or observations. Your insight could be the key to solving this mystery.
Now let's turn our attention to the aftermath of the grand jury's decision not to indict Danielle. We know this was a devastating blow to Cory's family.
Oh, yeah.
It must have felt like a slap in the face after Danielle admitted to sending those messages.
It's a bitter pill to swallow, knowing someone might be involved in the death of your loved one, yet they walk free without consequence.
Right.
The legal system, while designed to uphold justice, doesn't always provide the closure and resolution that victims' families desperately seek.
And legally, there was nothing they could do. The grand jury had spoken, even if it felt like a hollow victory.
But it's important to remember that the legal system is just one avenue for seeking justice. There's also the court of public opinion, the power of community activism,
Right.
and the unwavering pursuit of truth no matter how long it takes.
And that's exactly what Cory's mother, Carol, has dedicated herself to the past 13 years.
Right.
She's turned her grief into action, becoming a voice for victims' families.
She's been working tirelessly with organizations like Parents of Murdered Children and Moms Against Violence, demanding accountability and advocating for change.
Carol's resilience is truly inspiring. She could have easily succumbed to the pain and anger of losing her son,
Yeah.
but she chose to channel her energy into something positive, something that might prevent other families from enduring the same heartache.
She's determined to keep Cory's memory alive.
Right.
And to make sure his story isn't forgotten. And she hasn't given up hope that one day his killer will be brought to justice.
And that hope hinges not just on the police, but on anyone who might have information about the case.
Right.
Those billboards we mentioned earlier, they're still up in Dayton, serving as a constant reminder that this case remains open.
Any tip, no matter how small, could make all the difference.
Yeah.
Think about it. You, our listener, might hold that missing piece of the puzzle. Right. Have you revisited the details of the case? Examined the connections?
Right.
What are your thoughts? Who do you think is most likely responsible for Cory Mitchell's death?
Was it Lee acting on Danielle's request? Perhaps using his scooter to flee the scene?
Or was it Danielle, driven by jealousy and rage, manipulating others to carry out her plan?
Or is there another possibility, another player in this complex game that we haven't even considered?
Take some time to ponder these questions. Dive back into the source material. Look for those subtle clues, those inconsistencies that might have been overlooked.
Right.
And if you have any information, no matter how insignificant it may seem, don't hesitate to reach out to the Dayton Police Department.
You can find their contact information on our website, along with links to additional resources about this case. We'll also be posting a detailed summary of our discussion, highlighting key points and potential avenues for further exploration.
Remember, sometimes it's the collective effort, the
Yeah.
shared pursuit of justice
Right.
that finally brings the truth to light.
And in a case like this, where so many questions remain unanswered, every voice, every perspective matters. You know, we've spent a lot of time kind of like dissecting the details of this case, right?
Yeah.
Analyzing the evidence, following those twists and turns, trying to make sense of the senseless.
Right.
But it's important to remember that at the heart of this tragedy
Yeah.
is a family whose lives have been shattered.
Absolutely. It's easy to get caught up in the, forensic details, the legal arguments, the
Yeah.
whodunit aspect of it all, but we can't forget the human cost.
Right.
Cory Mitchell was more than just a name in a case file.
Yeah.
He was a son, a father, a friend, a life cut short far too soon.
And his loss has left this profound void
Yeah.
in the lives of those who loved him. His mother, Carol, spoke so powerfully about that life sentence she's been given, the enduring pain of losing her son, the constant wondering, the never-ending search for justice.
Yeah, it's a burden no parent should have to bear.
And Cory's children, Aisha and Dawn,
Oh.
they were just 11 years old when their father was murdered right in front of them.
Oh, wow.
The trauma of that experience is
Yeah.
unimaginable. They didn't just lose their father, they lost their sense of security, their innocence, their childhood.
Absolutely. It's a stark reminder of the ripple effect of violent crime.
Yeah.
How it extends far beyond the immediate victim, touching the lives of families, friends, and entire communities.
And that's why it's so crucial to keep these cases in the public eye.
Absolutely.
To keep asking questions, to keep pushing for answers, and to keep the hope for justice alive.
Carol's strength and resilience are truly inspiring. She could easily allowed herself to be consumed by grief and anger.
Yeah.
But instead, she's chosen to channel her energy into advocating for other families who've suffered similar losses.
Her work with organizations like Parents of Murdered Children and Moms Against Violence is a testament to her commitment to turning her personal tragedy into a force for positive change.
Yep.
She's determined to ensure that Cory's story isn't forgotten, that his memory lives on,
Right.
and that one day his killer will be held accountable.
And that hope for accountability rests not just with law enforcement, but with anyone who might have information about the case.
Right.
No detail is too small, no memory too insignificant.
Yeah.
Something you saw, something you heard, something you might have dismissed as irrelevant
Right.
could be the missing piece that finally brings closure to Cory's family.
So we urge you, our listener, to reflect on everything we've discussed today. Revisit those source materials.
Yeah.
Examine the connections.
Right.
And if you have any information, even if you think it's insignificant,
Yeah.
please reach out to the Dayton Police Department. You can find their contact information on our website, along with links to additional resources about the case.
Sometimes it just takes one small piece of information to break a case wide open. Your contribution could be the key to solving this mystery and finally bringing peace to Cory Mitchell's family after all these years.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the unsolved murder of Cory Mitchell.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
It's a case that reminds us of the importance of community, the power of perseverance,
Absolutely.
and the enduring hope for justice.
That's right.
Remember, every voice matters, every perspective counts, and sometimes it's the collective effort that makes all the difference.